You're nothing but dead weight. Harold, this house deserves life. Not a decaying old man. No. The words came from my own son, Nathan, as he stood at the head of the Christmas table, his wine glass raised like a weapon. The room froze. Silver forks hovered mid-air, and the golden glow of candles flickered against the stunned faces of relatives who didn't dare breathe. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, pressed her manicured nails into Nathan's arm, her lips curving into a cruel, satisfied smile. I felt the sting deeper than any blade. For decades, this house had been my fortress. Every brick laid with the sweat of my youth. Every room echoing with the laughter of my late wife, Eleanor. Now, in one brutal sentence, my only child reduced me to nothing more than a burden. I gripped the edge of the tablecloth to steady myself. My pulse hammered, yet my voice came out calm. Almost eerily calm. Is that what you really think of me, Nathan? He sneered, leaning closer so every guest could hear. I don't think it is. I know it. You've outlived your usefulness. We'll handle this place better than you ever could. Scene. Vanessa's emerald eyes glittered with venomous triumph. It's time for you to let go. Harold, this isn't your home anymore. Scene. The room fell into a silence so thick I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Christmas ornaments twinkled on the tree in the corner, their fragile glass baubles reflecting a scene that was shattering me from within. I rose slowly, my chair scraping across the wooden floor like a scream. My gaze moved from Nathan's flushed, arrogant face to Vanessa's icy smirk. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would collapse under the weight of humiliation. But they had just lit the fire of something they could never control. The air in the dining room turned heavy, as if the walls themselves absorbed the cruelty of Nathan's words. I remained standing, my hands pressed firmly on the table, while my son's voice echoed in my ears like the toll of a funeral bell. I said it once, Dad, and I'll say it again. You don't belong here anymore. This house, this family, it's ours now. He was not a dest. The candles flickered, shadows twisting across the faces of those gathered. My sister, Diane, lowered her gaze into her plate, unable to meet my eyes. My nephew's fork slipped from his fingers with a sharp clatter. But no one spoke. No one defended me. I looked at Nathan. His suit was pressed, his posture straight, his jaw set in arrogance. He had always wanted control, always wanted to be more than the boy I once carried on my shoulders to watch the fireworks on Independence Day. And now, fueled by Vanessa's ambition, he believed he had the right to erase me from my own home. You've forgotten everything I gave you, I said quietly, my voice trembling only from anger. Every sacrifice, every hour I worked so you could have the life you wanted. See, Nathan laughed bitterly. Sacrifice? You call sitting behind a desk sacrifice? You call paying bills heroic? You act like you built this world with your bare hands. See, my chest tightened. I could still feel the ache of the years in my bones, long nights. Overtime shifts. The quiet tears Eleanor wiped from my eyes when I came home too exhausted to eat. But Nathan saw none of that. Vanessa's cold hand slid over his, her painted nails glinting in the candlelight. He doesn't understand. Nathan, she said, her voice smooth and poisonous. He's clinging to memories of a house that's falling apart. We could make it beautiful again, modern, alive. But not with him dragging us down. And I glanced toward the living room where the Christmas tree glowed with Eleanor's ornaments. Each one had a story. The porcelain angel she bought at a street fair. The wooden soldier our neighbor carved when Nathan was 10. These weren't decorations, they were pieces of our history. Pieces Vanessa wanted to discard like trash. This house doesn't need new marble floors, I said. my voice rising. It doesn't need some designer kitchen. It needs respect. It needs family. Nathan slammed his hand against the table, rattling the wine glasses. Family. You think family is you hoarding control, clinging to the past while we suffer? You think family is about your rules, your dusty traditions? This is our time. Dad, you've had yours. His words landed like fists. I felt the sting of betrayal, sharper, because it came not from a stranger, but from my own blood. Vanessa smirked, her lips curving in satisfaction, as if every ounce of venom Nathan spat was her victory. I wanted to scream back. I wanted to tell them about the nights Eleanor sat by my side as I calculated how to cover Nathan's tuition. The times I sold my own dreams so he could chase his. But the truth was already twisted in their minds. My sacrifices were invisible to them, erased by greed and entitlement. You're selfish, Nathan hissed, pointing at me as if I were a criminal on trial. You think the world owes you respect because you're old, but you're just in the way, free. The guests shifted uneasily. Diane whispered something to her husband, but he shook his head, silencing her. No one would intervene. No one wanted to stand between a father and his son, even as the son shredded his father's dignity in front of them all. I straightened slowly, my fists clenched at my sides. The heat of the fire licked my back, but my blood ran cold. Is that truly what you believe? Locking eyes with Nathan, his face hardened. It's the truth. You're done here. Quote, the words sealed the silence that followed. A silence so heavy, it seemed to press against my chest. The Christmas dinner, the turkey untouched, the potatoes growing cold. The laughter that should have filled the air was nothing but a graveyard of memories now. I turned toward the doorway, my boots grinding against the hardwood floor. My eyes lingered one last time on the tree, the ornaments, the ghost of Eleanor's smile in the glass frame above the mantel. Nathan and Vanessa believed they had defeated me, but they didn't know me anymore, and they had no idea what I was about to become. I closed my eyes that night, but instead of sleep, the past came flooding in. Memories pressed against me, one after another, refusing to be ignored. I saw Eleanor and me, young and foolish, signing the papers for this house. My hand trembled as I held the pen, but she squeezed my fingers and whispered, "We'll fill it with warmth, Harold." And we did. Every corner of these walls once carried laughter, once smelled of her cooking, once felt alive. To keep that dream alive, I worked until my bones ached. Long shifts at the freight yard, hands cracked from winter air, nights that ended only when the sun rose. I came home covered in sweat and diesel. Eleanor met me with a cup of tea and that gentle smile. "You are not made of iron," she would whisper. I lied and told her I was, because there was no other choice. When Nathan was born, everything changed. I remember his small fists, the way he wailed as though the world had wronged him already. I hung my old hard hat above his crib like a crown. "One day you'll ask me why I work so much," I whispered to him. "And I'll tell you it's so you never have to feel small." There were winters when the pipes burst and the furnace failed. We bundled under blankets, Eleanor humming to keep Nathan calm while I patched the leaks with my frozen hands. I gave up new shoes so he could have skates. I sold my guitar, my only escape from the grind, just so he could go to summer camp. I remember Eleanor's eyes when she saw the empty space on the wall where it once hung. "It's only wood," she said. "It was a song," I answered. "Then sing to me now," she replied. And I did, softly, so Nathan could sleep. He grew so fast. His backpack looked bigger than his body on the first day of school. He turned at the door and waved. a gap-toothed grin splitting his face. That night he drew a picture of a house with a red roof. 4 stick figures held hands on the lawn. He gave me a crown in the drawing. "Why a crown?" I asked. "Because you fix everything," he said. I went to the garage and cried where no one could hear me. There were nights of sickness too. Fevers that spiked at 2 in the morning. Drives through snow to urgent care. Eleanor held his hands while I filled out the forms. I remember counting his breaths. Terrified one would be the last. And then relief. Pure and overwhelming. When the medicine finally worked, Eleanor leaned against me, whispering, "We are lucky." And in that moment, I believed her. But luck is never permanent. Years later, Eleanor's cough began. At first it was small. Then it grew until it became the soundtrack of our lives. Hospitals, scans, treatments. I learned the sterile language of oncologists, the cold silence of waiting rooms. "Live small," the doctor said. "Live close." So we did. I moved her bed to the sunny window. I cooked her eggs the way she liked, burnt at the edges. Light on the salt. When her hair fell, I held the curls in my palm like broken promises. "Still pretty?" she asked in the mirror. "Always," I said, though my throat burned. Nathan avoided those hospital rooms at first. He said he had exams. He said the smell made him sick. He was young, and maybe that was his excuse. But eventually, he sat by her side and read her favorite novel aloud. His voice shook, so I took over, finishing the chapters for both of them. When she passed, it was snowing outside. She asked me to keep the lights on for him. I promised. I kept that promise. I packed his lunches. I sat with him at the kitchen table, going over essays long after my own eyes blurred from exhaustion. I clapped at his games, cheered for victories I barely understood. I saved every photograph he took when he discovered his love for the camera. He won an award for capturing raindrops on a windshield. I still remember how his eyes searched the crowd until they found me. "I did this for Mom," he said. And I told him, "So did I." Kennedy, everything I had, every bone in my body, every dream I let go of it, all went into making his life brighter. I asked for so little in return. Respect, gratitude, a seat at the table I built with my own hands. And now, tonight, he looked me in the eye and called me dead weight. The house remembers, even if he does not. Every nail I hammered, every laugh Eleanor left in these walls, every tear shed in silence. This place is more than wood and brick. It is my life, my sacrifice, my promise. And I will not let them erase it, not Nathan, not Vanessa, not anyone. The betrayal didn't arrive like a storm. It came quietly, like cracks spreading through a foundation. Small enough at first that you tell yourself it's nothing. But I saw it. I felt it in the little ways Nathan and Vanessa began to change the rhythm of this house. It started when Eleanor's photograph, the one that had rested on the mantel since her funeral, was turned face down. I lifted it upright again, brushing the dust from the frame. But the next morning it lay flat once more. Soon after, boxes appeared in the hallway. Inside them were quilts Eleanor had sewn, the wooden soldier Nathan carried in a grade school play, and the porcelain teacups she treasured. Vanessa labeled the lid with one word: donate. My hand trembled as I tore away the paper and returned the cups to their shelf. Vanessa began walking the rooms with her phone in hand, scrolling through glossy images of homes stripped of history. "Knock this wall down," she said one evening, pointing to the dining room. "Open concept. Buyers love it. New floors. New kitchen island. This place could be stunning." She looked at the window seat where Eleanor used to read on winter afternoons. Rip that out, it's outdated. I felt something break inside me. That seat wasn't outdated. It was Eleanor. It was the heart of this house. Nathan followed her lead. He no longer asked if I was eating well or how I was sleeping. Instead, he asked about the mortgage. Do you still have that home equity line? We could use it to refresh the place, raise its value. He spoke like a broker, like a man circling prey. When I said no, his eyes slid away, ashamed but unwilling to stop. Then came the whispers. One night, I went to the pantry for sugar and froze at the sound of Vanessa's voice on speakerphone. He loses track of things, she said. We're concerned. A pause. Then her reply. The sugar jar slipped in my hand, clattering against the counter. They turned to look at me, and Vanessa's smile was cold. Practiced. Want some tea? She asked as though nothing had happened. Even my sister began to call with strange questions. Are you misplacing things? Harold? Are you getting enough rest? She said Nathan was worried about me. I told her I was fine, but my chest tightened as I realized he was already planting seeds, whispering stories that I was slipping, that I couldn't be trusted. The most painful wound came when I returned home one afternoon to find two strangers in the living room. They carried clipboards and a laser measure. Just estimates, Vanessa said cheerfully. We're considering beams down, new lighting, darker floors. My son stood beside them, pretending to study the numbers, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to shout, but the words caught in my throat. Later that night, when I checked the hall closet, I found a suitcase half-packed with my belongings, old photographs, documents, even my passport. I hadn't touched any of it. Someone else had. From that moment, I began locking my bedroom door at night. I never thought I would have to in my own home. The kindness they showed me turned sharp at the edges. Vanessa taped a brightly colored chart to the fridge for my medication. I take 1 pill a day, and I've never missed it in 10 years. Yet some boxes were checked before I had swallowed anything. It wasn't help. It was a record, something they could point to when they argued I was no longer capable of caring for myself. A friend of mine, Mason, met me for lunch one afternoon. We sat by the river, watching the ice move with the current. He listened quietly as I told him what was happening. He didn't offer false comfort. He just said, write everything down, keep records. Don't argue, document. That night I bought a notebook. I began writing dates, conversations, every detail I could recall. I hated myself for needing it, but I knew he was right. And then the final seed was planted. One evening I stepped onto the porch and found a brochure waiting on the doormat. On the cover was a photograph of an older man smiling in a spotless facility. The headline printed in cheerful letters, Live with Dignity. A sticky note clung to the corner. Tour booked for you. Wednesday at 11. We love you. V. Bana. A. Is not then. I stood in the cold with that brochure in my hands. The Christmas lights flickering along the block. The world moving as though nothing had changed. But everything had. That note told me they weren't waiting for my decision. They were laying the tracks already, pushing me toward a place I hadn't chosen. Away from the house I had built with Eleanor. Away from the life I had promised to protect. I carried the brochure back inside and slid it into the drawer where Eleanor's letters still rested. I sat at the kitchen table, the tea beside me growing cold, every lamp in the house blazing against the winter dark. I remembered her last words to me. Keep the lights on. So I did. I turned on every lamp. A small act of defiance. A vow that I wasn't done. No matter how hard they tried to bury me alive. I woke before dawn. The house was silent. The street was a gray ribbon under frost. I made coffee and watched steam rise. I took Eleanor's letters from the drawer and put on my coat. Mason unlocked his shop as the fog lifted. We sat by the window with paper cups. I told him everything. The brochure on the mat. The suitcase in the closet. The checked boxes on a chart I did not use. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he watched the water slide under ice. "You need two things," he said. "A witness and a wall. It is Manicorden. I have a notebook." I said. "Good. Now find someone who cannot be bullied. Someone who knows the law. Build a wall between your life and their hands. There is," he wrote a number on a receipt. "Her name is Evelyn Park. Elder Law. Maple Street. Tell her I sent you. There is," I called from the sidewalk. A calm voice gave me a time that afternoon. I walked the long way there. Evelyn's office sat above a bakery. A brass bell rang when I opened the door. She stood to greet me. Small and steady, with clear eyes that missed nothing. She offered tea. I asked for water. "I know what they want," I said. "They want my house. They want a story that says I cannot care for myself. Has he won that?" She nodded once. "We will make a different story. We will not promise it. We will prove it." "Has he won that?" She asked questions. Could I manage bills? Yes. I laid statements on the table. Did I drive? Yes. Did I cook? Shop? Keep appointments? Yes. I showed lists with dates. She asked me to read and summarize a short paragraph. I did. When she finished, she closed her notes with care. "You are capable," she said. "You are grieving. You are tired. But you are capable. We will document that today. An annul with many fall." She called a clinician she trusted. By evening, I had a signed evaluation in a sealed envelope. I was competent to manage my affairs. Evelyn slid a copy into a new file with my name on it. I breathed easier for the first time in weeks. Then we built the wall. First, new accounts, she said. A bank they do not know, paperless statements. Change every password. Ordonnez, I wrote as she spoke. Freeze the home equity line. Place the deed in a safe deposit box. Keep originals where only I can reach them. Second, control access, she said. No contractors without your approval. No tours. No estimates. If they invite strangers in, ask them to leave. If they refuse, call me. Then the police. This is your home. Ordonnez. My throat tightened. They will say I am cruel. Ordonnez. They will say what they need to say. She answered. You will act with dignity. For H&, third. Evidence, she said. Keep your notebook. Add dates and direct quotes. Use your phone to record your own statements. Do not provoke. Let their words stand. For H&, I told her about the sticky note, the suitcase, the chart on the fridge. She wrote each detail. She asked for photos. She gave me a secure address to send scans. I felt watched over, not owned. Last, your wishes, she said. You need a will that reflects them, and a medical directive that names someone you trust. 8, I have no one, I said. You have Mason, she said. And you have me. We can appoint a professional if needed. We can also create a simple trust that holds the house. You will be the trustee. No one can sell it out from under you. Friendy, for months, I had felt like a man fading from the picture. My outline darkened again. She sent me to the bank before they closed. I opened new accounts and rented a safe deposit box. I placed the deed inside with a copy of Eleanor's will. I changed passwords in the car with my hands shaking. When I returned, she had the papers ready. I read each line. I signed slowly. The pen felt heavy as a hammer. At the door, she said, This will be a long week. Eat. Sleep with your phone charged. If they escalate, do not engage. Call me. If you feel alone, call Mason. If the house feels cold, turn on a light and read Eleanor's letters. And the next week, I carried the file down the stairs into the smell of bread. The folder warmed under my arm. I did not feel safe, but I felt steadier. I called Mason by the river. I told him everything. He whistled low. That is the wall, he said. Now be your own witness. And the next week, I went home by the long route. On the porch, the warm window felt like a test I could pass. I set the file on the table and opened my notebook. I wrote the date. I wrote the time. I wrote the first sentence of the man I had decided to be. I will not be erased. Then I cooked eggs the way Eleanor liked them. Burned at the edges. Light on the salt. The house smelled alive again. I ate standing up and listened to the clock. I charged my phone. I walked the rooms I built and promised them I was not finished. Cars moved through winter air. Somewhere a woman folded a brochure and told herself she was right. Nathan would come home soon. He would test locks on doors he had no right to open. I rinsed the plate and set it to dry. I looked at Eleanor's photograph on the mantel. I put it upright and kept it there with my hand. I am ready now. I will not step back again. I began the next morning with a list. Evelyn had told me to document everything. And Mason had told me to write it all down. But now I needed more than words. I needed proof solid. Undeniable truth that could not be twisted or erased. I started in the kitchen. Bills had a way of piling up, even when Vanessa tried to hide them under magazines. I pulled the stack from the drawer and spread it across the table. Gas. Electric. Water paid late more than once. Then credit card statements. Their balances bleeding across every page. Designer handbags. Dinners at expensive restaurants. Tickets to shows they could never afford. Every number screamed of recklessness. Among them, one envelope stood out. It was from the bank. I tore it open and felt the weight of the words. Overdue mortgage payments on an investment property they had purchased last year. I remembered Nathan boasting about it at dinner, calling it their path to financial independence. Now the bank threatened foreclosure. I copied the account number into my notebook, my pen pressing so hard it nearly tore the page. That night, when the house fell into silence, I crept back into the living room. I moved carefully, each floorboard mapped in my memory. I knew where they creaked and where they stayed silent. On the coffee table lay another statement. This one from a premium wine club. $200 a month. Charged to the same card, already drowning in debt. I took photos with my phone. Each click of the shutter like a nail driven into their coffin. The next day I drove across town to the courthouse. Evelyn had warned me if they planned to challenge my competency, they would need paperwork. I requested public records. The clerk raised an eyebrow, but complied. Within minutes, I had copies of documents with Nathan's signature. Applications for loans he never mentioned. One of them listing my house as anticipated collateral. My chest tightened as I folded the papers into a folder. They weren't just careless. They were deliberate. At night, I searched their study. Vanessa had left her laptop open, carelessly charging by the desk. I didn't need to break into it. Her phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with messages. One preview caught my eye. Once the house is in your name, we can refinance everything. I pressed record on my own phone and read the message aloud. Evelyn had told me, capture their words. Capture their intent. Days passed, each one revealing more of the rot. Nathan had missed payments on his car. Vanessa owed for a cosmetic procedure she swore was a gift. Their image on social media, their constant posts of luxury meals and vacations, was a facade built on debt. And beneath it all, They were sharpening their knives to carve me out of my own life. I could feel their impatience growing. Vanessa began pressing harder, leaving brochures for renovations on the counter. Nathan's tone hardened whenever we spoke. "Dad, this house is too much for you. Don't you see we're helping?" Helping. The word tasted like poison. I wrote it all down. Every date, every phrase, every piece of evidence slid into a folder that grew heavier each night. Soon, I would take it all to Evelyn. Soon, their lies would stand naked before the law. The house seemed to know what I was doing. The walls creaked at night as if approving. The old clock ticked louder, urging me on. Eleanor's photograph caught the morning light on the mantel. Her smile steady, her eyes calm. I whispered to her, "I'm building something, Ellie, brick by brick. For us, for the life they tried to erase." Said, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt prepared. The attack began with a click I could not hear. I put my key into the front door, and it stopped halfway. The teeth met metal and would not turn. A new cylinder, clean and gold, glared at me from the knob. My own porch light lit my face as if I were a stranger. I rang the bell. Vanessa opened the door just enough for her smile to fit through. Her perfume drifted onto the cold air. "We changed the lock for safety," she said. "You forgot the stove last week." Nathan almost called the fire department. "Say, I did not forget the stove," I said. "Move aside." "Say, you can come in," she answered. After we set some ground rules. Said, Nathan came to the door with his arms crossed. He did not meet my eyes. "Dad, we love you," he said. "But you need structure. We are taking the lead from now on." I stepped past them before either could protest. I walked straight to the kitchen. The burner knobs were clean. The kettle was where I had left it. I opened the drawer and found my notebook. I wrote the date and time. Then I wrote 5 words. Lock changed without my consent. They followed me through the room like shadows. Vanessa set a folder on the counter and tapped it with one finger. "A nurse will come by on Friday," she said. "She will do a little memory check. Just routine. We want to make sure you are safe." I did not ask for a nurse," I said. "She works with the residents across town," Nathan added. "They have a studio open. It would be perfect for you. Close to shops. People your age." My age can make tea," I said. "My age can read a deed." Nathan flinched. Vanessa folded her arms. That night, they took the car keys. They said it was temporary. They said I could request rides through an app Vanessa installed on my phone. I called Mason. He drove me to the bank at dawn. We added a note to my file. No account changes without my signature in person. I placed the car title in the safe deposit box. I walked home along the river and watched the ice crack. By noon, the phone began to ring. My sister asked if I had been wandering at night. A neighbor asked if the police had found me. A cousin said Vanessa was brave for stepping up. I swallowed my pride and said I was fine. After each call, I wrote in the notebook, name, time, exact words. A map of whispers spread across the page. On Wednesday, I came home with groceries and found 2 men in boot covers measuring rooms. Tape stretched across the living room like caution lines. "You need to leave while we assess," one of them said. "Liability." I will. "You need to leave my house," I answered. "Now." "And Mason with you, friend." Vanessa appeared from the hallway with a brochure. Her voice was soft, almost sweet. "They are only doing estimates. You get overwhelmed when strangers come by." To explained, "I am not overwhelmed," I said. "I am the owner." To explained, I called Evelyn from the porch. She answered on the first ring. Ask them to leave, she said. If they refuse, call the police and remain calm. Film your own words. Show no anger. Keep the high ground. To explain, I went back in. I asked them to leave. They did not argue. They slipped out the door with their tape reels and their tidy shoes. On Friday, the nurse arrived. Her badge said Colleen. Her eyes were kind, but tired. Vanessa hovered near the doorway with a pen in her hand. I prefer to speak with him alone, Colleen said. Vanessa faltered, then retreated to the hall. Colleen asked me questions. What day is it? Who is the president? Count backward by sevens. Recall 3 words after a minute. I answered. She asked what I cook and how I manage money. I showed her lists. I showed her the pill bottle. 1 a day. None missing. She nodded and wrote. At the end, she looked toward the hall and then back to me. You are capable, she said softly. I will note that you have support needs, like anyone your age. I will also note that you understand your life and your home. No my stas. Good exacted in that and Mester the Potter was lan. Thank you, I said. Vanessa followed her to the door and whispered something I could not hear. Colleen did not reply. She wished me a good afternoon and left with her coat unbuttoned against the cold. That night Nathan took another step. He stood in the doorway of my room with a cardboard box in his arms. We need you to pack some things for the weekend, he said. We booked the tour. It will help you see the benefits. That she feign, I am not going, I said. You do not have a choice, Vanessa called from the hall. I stood with my hands in my pockets and looked at my son. I remembered the boy on the blue bike. I remembered the first time he brought home a photograph he loved. I remembered his voice when he said he took the picture for his mother. Put the box down, Nathan, I said. Think for a minute. See, I am thinking, he snapped. I am thinking about safety. I am thinking about the future. See, the future has a name, I said. It is dignity. See, he turned away. The box thumped against the wall. On Sunday, they tried the legal route. A server came to the porch at dinner. He handed me a packet and asked for my signature. It was a petition for temporary guardianship. Attached were statements from 2 relatives who had not seen me in months. One said I wandered. One said I forgot names. There was also a note from Vanessa. It said I misused the stove and misplaced my wallet. It said I had become paranoid and combative. I signed the receipt and closed the door with my hands steady. I pressed record on my phone. I read the front page aloud. I read each claim. Then I dialed Evelyn. She asked me to scan every page. She asked me to mark the date of the hearing. She told me to eat dinner and sleep. They are moving fast, she said. Good. We move faster. Your evaluation is solid. Your records are better. You will not be alone in that room. The rest are 10. After the call, I stood at the sink and washed a plate. The window reflected my face and the small lights of the tree in the next room. The house felt alert. The air held its breath. Vanessa came to the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. You do not have to fight us, she said. Let go and we will make things easier. Oh, easier for who? I asked. For everyone, she said. I dried the plate and set it upright to shine. I did not answer. I took my notebook from the counter and wrote down her words. Then I walked to the living room and lifted Eleanor's photograph with both hands. I set it in the center of the mantel and adjusted the frame until the light found her face. Outside, a car door shut. The street was quiet again. The petition lay on the table with the ink still drying. They had fired the first shot. They expected me to break. I turned on the porch light and let it burn. The petition sat on my table like a wound that refused to close. Every time I passed it, I felt the weight of their lies pressing into my chest. Wandering, forgetting names, combative, paranoid. Words written not to describe me, but to erase me. For 2 nights I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling beams I had sanded with my own hands years ago, hearing Eleanor's voice in the back of my mind. Keep the lights on. I could hear her laugh, soft and steady, reminding me that silence was surrender. I had been quiet for too long. On the 3rd morning I rose before dawn, poured a black coffee, and opened my notebook. The pages were filled, now dates, times, conversations recorded word for word, evidence of the way they spoke to me, the brochures they left on my table, the suitcases half-packed in the hall. For weeks I had collected fragments. Now I would build them into a weapon. I drove to Evelyn's office with the folder under my arm. She read in silence, her pen tapping slowly against the desk. At the end, she set the papers down and met my eyes. They're making this about control, she said. Not care. But control can be proved. Control leaves fingerprints. And live, too. She spread the documents across her desk. Nathan's loan records, receipts for wine clubs and designer clothes. Then she pulled out the evaluation Colleen had written only days earlier. The words glowed like a lantern in the dark. Capable of managing his own affairs. Here is the truth, Evelyn said. We won't just defend you. We'll show their motive. Debt. Greed. The house is your fortress. They wanted to plug their leaks. We'll make the judge see that. They're rammed. For the first time in months, I felt the ground shift under my feet, not away from me, but toward me. That night, Nathan confronted me in the living room. His jaw was tight, his voice shaking with anger. Why are you fighting us? We're your family. They're rammed. Family doesn't lock the door against you, I said. Family doesn't whisper that you're insane. They're rammed. His face flushed red. Vanessa hovered behind him, her smile brittle. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said. Harder for you, I answered. I pulled my phone from my pocket and pressed record. I asked Nathan why they had refinanced loans under my address. I asked Vanessa why she packed my passport. Their silence was louder than any denial. When they turned away, I knew I had captured enough. Over the next week, I prepared with a precision I hadn't felt since the days Eleanor and I first built this life together. Every evening, I sorted papers into labeled folders. Financial mismanagement, false statements, medical evaluation, photographs of heirlooms Vanessa had boxed up for donation, audio recordings of conversations where they spoke about, after the house is in our name. Mason came by one night, carrying a bag of sandwiches. We ate at the kitchen table, the folders stacked between us like bricks. You're ready, he said. You've turned their trap into your wall. I'm not just ready, I told him. I'm done being quiet. The hearing was 2 weeks away, but I no longer feared the calendar. Each day I grew steadier, clearer. When Nathan tried to bait me into shouting, I stayed calm. When Vanessa hinted that I was forgetful, I smiled and wrote down the date and time. Their games no longer broke me, they exposed them. The house itself seemed to stand taller. I cleaned Eleanor's photo, polished the frame until it gleamed in the morning light. I walked the rooms at night, reminding myself of each nail, each scar in the wood. They thought I was fragile, but I was steel wrapped in memory. The turning point wasn't a single moment. It was a decision I made and remade every day. I would not surrender. They had fired the first shot. I was loading the return volley. I was ready to fight for my dignity, for Eleanor's promise, for the home that carried the weight of our lives. And this time, I would not just defend. I would strike back. Evelyn cleared a space on her desk and drew a quiet line through the chaos. My folder, her legal pad, a glass of water between us. It felt like a command post. "We will not wait," she said. "We prepare now." The Clanago. I handed her the photos from the house. The packed suitcase. The chart with boxes checked. The brochure for the residence with the sticky note. She spread them out like cards. Then I gave her the recordings. Short files. Date stamped. My voice steady. Their silences louder than shouts. Evelyn listened with eyes on the page. She did not blink when Vanessa said after the house is in our name. She only wrote the time. Colleen's evaluation sat on top, capable of managing his own affairs. Those words steadied me. They were a lighthouse in a storm I did not choose. 2 tracks, Evelyn said. Court and family. That was a nation. Court first, I said. She drafted a response to the petition. I watched her build it line by line. Colleen's evaluation attached. My bank notes attached. My lists of bills and dates. Exhibits for the whispers they seeded. Each piece had a number. Each number told the same truth. I am not confused. I am not lost. I am not theirs to move. We will file first thing, she said. We ask for dismissal. We ask for costs. We ask for a protective order against further interference. There's a live de noose and cold de no thround. Her pen paused. And housing, she added. You decide today. Greatly, this house is mine, I said. It remains mine. There's a live de noose and cold and money friend. Then we protect it, she said. A simple trust. You as trustee. No one can sell. No one can pledge. Deed in. Keys with you. Then nuts hands, she prepared the papers. I read every page. Names correct. Dates correct. The trust bore Eleanor's middle name. It warmed my hands as I signed. I felt like I was hammering a nail that would never loosen. We moved to the second track. Family. Evelyn looked up. They will stage a moment. They need an audience, she said. They need witnesses for their version. You choose where you stand when the moment comes. And their word, they plan a Christmas Eve open house. I said. They invited my cousins, my sister, neighbors. And their word, good, she said. Then we use it. Calm, public, clear. And their word. We built a packet for every guest. A 1-page timeline in plain words. The nurse's evaluation. The bank letter about the investment property. Photos of the suitcase and the chart. Still frames from my recordings with transcripts of key lines. No adjectives. No heat. Just truth. A simple cover read, my statement for the record. I paid a printer near the courthouse. He stacked the packets in crisp bundles. I added a small envelope to each bundle. Inside was a card with a QR code to a secure folder that Evelyn managed. The audio. The full receipts. The filings stamped by the clerk. If someone doubted, they could check with one scan. Mason met me by the river that night. He carried a thermos and 2 paper cups. We talked in short sentences. There was no poetry left to say. He agreed to come to the open house. He would stand near the kitchen. He would pass the packets when I spoke. He would keep his phone on record for a clean backup. I will not argue, I said. You will not need to, he answered. The next morning I went to the bank. I opened a separate safe deposit box for the trust deed and the original evaluation. I signed a new access list. Only my name. The clerk wished me a good holiday. I nodded and kept my mouth closed. The papers slid into the box with a sound that felt final. At home I cleaned the dining table. I set Eleanor's photo in the center and polished the glass until it caught the winter light. Then I walked room to room and took inventory. I wrote down the items that mattered. The quilt with the red stitching. The wooden soldier. The teacups with the faint blue rim. I took quick photos and printed the list for my file. If anything went missing, we would not guess. We would prove. Midday. A locksmith I trusted rekeyed my bedroom door. I gave him the code to the safe that holds my documents. I changed it once he left. The team that changed the front lock did not get the final say inside my walls. Not anymore. That evening I called my sister. I did not plead. I did not accuse. I told her there would be packets at the open house. I told her I would speak once and only once. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she would listen. Her voice sounded tired. I could not blame her. A lie repeated for weeks becomes a hum that seems true. Only clear light can break it. I slept at last. Not long. Not deep. Enough to wake with purpose. I made coffee. I cooked eggs the way Eleanor liked them. Burned at the edges. Light on the salt. I set one plate at the empty seat across from mine and let the steam rise. It felt like a vigil before battle. Evelyn called at noon. Filing confirmed. Hearing set. Copy served. She would attend the open house as my guest. She would not argue there. She would only observe. Her presence was a signal I could carry like a badge. After the call, I assembled the final piece. A letter to Nathan and Vanessa. Plain words. No anger. A formal notice that any further attempt to move me without consent would meet immediate legal action. I signed it and sealed 2 envelopes. I placed them in my briefcase with the packets. I pressed my palm to the leather until I felt my pulse slow. The house waited. It was quiet, but not empty. Every lamp was on. The tree lights blinked in slow rhythm. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft and steady. I took Eleanor's photo in both hands and spoke aloud. "We are ready," I said. I pictured the open house. The coats on the rack. The tray of cookies. The sound of forced cheer. Vanessa with her smile. Nathan with his jaw set. Their allies standing near the window. I pictured the moment where the room goes still. The moment when faces turn. My voice must be clean then. Simple. Steady. No flourish. Just truth. I packed the briefcase and tested the clasp. I put on my coat and stood in the doorway. I turned the porch light on and left it burning. The night took a breath and held it. I was not walking toward humiliation. I was walking toward light. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snow. The neighborhood glowed with warm lights strung across porches. Carols drifting faintly from radios. The smell of cinnamon and pine in the air. Inside my house, laughter rose like smoke. But it was brittle. Forced. I could hear it before I opened the door. I stepped into the dining room and felt every pair of eyes turn. Coats lay piled on the rack. Glasses of wine sparkled in hands. And the turkey sat untouched at the center of the table. Vanessa moved gracefully between guests. Her smile wide. Her voice sweet. Nathan stood near the tree. A glass raised as if he were already the master of the house. "Dad," he said loudly, so all could hear. "We're so glad you could join us. I was just telling everyone how we've been worried. How you've been struggling." "Hey." A murmur moved through the crowd. My sister's lips pressed tight. My cousin's eyes flicked down. Vanessa rested a hand on Nathan's arm, her emerald earrings catching the light. "We all love Harold," she said gently. "But sometimes love means hard choices. He forgets things. He misplaces bills. We think he needs a place where he can be safe. A danger. Safe." The word slid like a knife. I stood by the mantel, Eleanor's photo gleaming in its frame. Mason gave a slight nod from the kitchen, his hand resting on the stack of packets. Evelyn sat near the end of the table, calm, silent, her pen poised. I let the silence stretch until the fire popped in the hearth. Then I spoke. "I hear your concern," I said. my voice steady. I hear the story you've been telling. But tonight, I will tell mine. As things fill forth, I opened my briefcase and placed the folders on the table. Mason began passing the packets, one by one, into waiting hands. Paper rustled. Wine glasses clinked against wood. Faces bent over pages. Some frowned. Some gasped. These are the records. I continued. Every bill they hid. Every debt they tried to cover. Every word they said when they thought no one was listening. Sing. Nathan stepped forward. His face flushed. Dad, this is unnecessary. You don't understand. I raised a hand. I understand perfectly. I pressed play on my phone. Vanessa's voice filled the room. Sharp. Cold. Once the house is in our name, we can refinance everything. The words hung heavy. Guests shifted uneasily. My sister lifted her eyes to me, tears forming. I set Colleen's evaluation on the table, tapping the sentence with my finger. Capable of managing his own affairs. That is me. Not your burden. Not your prisoner. Formation Vare. Vanessa's smile cracked. He's twisting things. She snapped. He's paranoid. You all know, do they? I asked. Do they know you packed my passport in a suitcase? Do they know you booked me a tour of a residence without my consent? Do they know you changed the locks on my own front door? Gasps rose like wind through trees. Mason handed out the final page's photos of the suitcase. The sticky note. The chart on the fridge, with boxes ticked before I ever swallowed a pill. Proof. Solid. Unshakable. Nathan's voice broke. We were trying to help, and man. I turned to him, my heart heavy with memory. Help is holding your father's hand when he's tired. Help is listening to his stories. Help is respect. Nathan, what you did was not help. It was theft dressed in concern. And man. The room was silent except for the ticking of the mantel clock. My sister laid her packet down and stared at Nathan. Her face pale. Others looked away. Ashamed. I picked up Eleanor's photograph and held it close to my chest. This house is not just wood and brick. It is a promise I made to my wife. To keep the lights on. To keep our family safe. You tried to break that promise for your own gain. But I will not let you. In the gesture. Vanessa's eyes darted across the room, searching for an ally. No one spoke. No one moved. Evelyn finally stood, her voice calm, firm. The truth is clear. Any further interference will face immediate legal consequence. This man is not incompetent. He is not alone. In the Deschans. I set the photograph back on the mantel and looked at my son. His eyes dropped, shoulders sagging. Vanessa turned away, her face burning red. The room seemed to exhale. I straightened my back, my voice carrying across the table. This is my home, and I will not be erased from it. There relieved a comment. Snow pressed against the windows. The fire burned steady. For the first time in months, the weight lifted. I had spoken. The truth had been heard. And the silence that followed was not empty, it was victory. The party ended like a candle drowning in its own wax. Guests reached for coats and avoided my eyes. Trays sat untouched. Ice melted into weak water. Snow brushed the windows as if the night wanted to erase every word. My sister came first. She held the packet to her chest. I am sorry. Harold, she said. I nodded and spared her more pain. She kissed my cheek and stepped into the cold. Neighbors and cousins followed. Hands on my shoulder. Soft apologies. No speeches. The truth had done its work. Quiet and exact. Only Nathan and Vanessa stayed. Stunned by the silence they could not steer. Vanessa tried to rebuild her smile. It did not hold. She whispered at Nathan. He stared at the floor. He set his glass down. The crystal touched the table with a sound like a crack in ice. I did not ask them to leave. I did not raise my voice. I straightened Eleanor's photo on the mantel. I set a teacup at her place, rinsed it, dried it, and returned it to the shelf. A small act. The first breath. After being underwater, Mason helped me stack chairs. He handed me a packet left behind. On the cover was Vanessa's neat list of contractors and a schedule for demolition. In the margin, she had written a word for January. Begin. I folded the page and filed it. End. I thought. The house slept late. I brewed coffee and walked from room to room. The window seat caught the pale light. The wooden soldier watched from the bookcase. I called Evelyn and told her the night. Good, she said. The record is public. We proceed. By noon, a hearing notice was served. 2 days later, Evelyn met me at the courthouse. Nathan and Vanessa arrived together. They would not look at me. The judge read without heat. He read Colleen's evaluation first. He asked me 2 questions. I answered plainly. He turned to the petition and drew a yellow line through its claims. Wandering, misplacing names, combative, paranoid. The words dulled under his hand. Evelyn rose once. She placed the packet on the ledge and spoke like still water. Debts, account notes, recordings, suitcase, lock, no color, no heat. The truth stood by itself. The judge dismissed the petition. He ordered costs to me and warned them to stop. A clerk stamped the order. The stamp rang like a bell. We stepped into the cold. Evelyn shook my hand. Go home, she said. Rest. I said I would try. I drove to the cemetery first. Snow hid the names. I brushed Eleanor's stone and traced the letters. I told her what had happened. I told her the lights were still on. I stood until my toes went numb. Then returned to the car and turned the heater high. The house welcomed me with a quiet that felt clean. I hung my coat and stacked the court papers on the counter. Nathan and Vanessa were in the living room with open boxes and drawn faces. We have 30 days, he said. His voice was flat. Evelyn had served a formal notice to vacate that morning. I had not asked for it with joy. I asked for it because I could not live in a siege. Vanessa tried once more. We can start over, she said. Everyone spoke in anger. Mistakes were made by all. I looked at the suitcase, the chart on the fridge, the sticky note in my file. Take what is yours, I said. Leave what is mine. She swallowed hard. Nathan lifted a box and did not meet my eyes. I did not gloat or bless. I opened the door and let the cold move through the room. The wind carried their perfume into the street. Days settled into a new rhythm. I cooked simple food. I fixed a loose hinge. I put the quilts back where they belonged. I wrote thanks to relatives who sent notes. Mason came by with nails and a level. We rehung the shelf that had begun to lean. On the last morning of their 30 days, Nathan stood in the doorway with the final box. He looked smaller than his coat. His mouth opened and closed. No speech came. He set the box on the step and went to the car. Vanessa stared through me as if I were glass. The engine started. The tires bit the snow. The street swallowed the sound. I stood in the entry and listened to the house breathe. No voices leaked from the hallway. The clock counted honest seconds. I sat at the window seat with my hands on my knees. Sun slid across the floorboards. Dust rose like gold and fell again. I made tea. I filled Eleanor's cup and held it in both hands. I did not toast to victory. I thanked the room for staying with me when I felt alone. I thanked the old wood for carrying weight without complaint. I thanked the woman whose picture watched from the mantel. The mail truck stopped. Inside the box was a card from my sister. A single line in her hand. I will come by on Sunday with cinnamon bread. We will sit. We will listen. I set the card beside the photo. The worst had passed. The work would continue. There were scuffs to polish and a heart to steady. There was light to keep. I turned every lamp on and let them burn. The snow thinned as January turned. The house exhaled with me. Freer now. Lighter. Though its wood still carried scars. I woke to quiet mornings and brewed coffee without fear of footsteps behind me. Each room was mine again. And for the first time in months, I could walk through them without dread. I began with small acts. I rehung Eleanor's quilt above the stairwell. I polished the wooden soldier and placed it back on the shelf. I repaired the window seat cushion, running my hand across the fabric until I could almost feel her weight beside me. These were not decorations. They were promises kept. Mason visited often. We ate soup at the kitchen table and spoke little. Sometimes, silence is the only true company. Other times, he laughed loud enough to remind me that joy had not abandoned me. He told me the river would thaw soon, that we should sit on its banks when spring came. I promised we would. One afternoon, I sat with Evelyn at her office. She laid the final papers before me. The dismissal order, the trust documents, the protective notice, all stamped, all sealed. She placed them in a folder with my name etched across the top. "You've done more than defend yourself," she said. "You've reclaimed your life." I thanked her, but words felt small compared to what she had given me. At home, I wrote a letter to Nathan. My hands shook at first, but then steadied. "My son, you tried to take what was not yours. You let fear and greed turn you against me. I cannot forget that. But I will not carry hate. Hate is another prison. I choose to forgive, not for your sake, but for mine. I will keep the lights on, as I promised your mother. If you wish to find your way back, you must come with honesty, not schemes. Until then, I wish you peace." I sealed the envelope and left it on the mantel beside Eleanor's photo. I did not know if I would send it. Maybe forgiveness was enough spoken only to the walls. Evenings grew gentler. I cooked eggs the way she liked them, burned at the edges, light on the salt. I ate slowly, letting the taste remind me of mornings we once shared. I played the old radio and let it fill the rooms with music. At times, I spoke aloud, telling Eleanor about the day. It no longer hurt like a wound. It soothed like a scar that proved survival. On Sundays, my sister visited. She brought cinnamon bread, and we sat by the fire, letting silence and memory braid together. We did not speak often of Nathan. We spoke instead of Eleanor's laughter, of childhood summers, of the way snow used to thrill us as children. The house listened. It felt whole. I know life will not be without shadows. I am old. I will falter again. But I am not erased. I am still here. Keeping the lights on, that is my dignity. That is my freedom. On the last night of the year, I walked room to room and turned on every lamp. Warm light filled the house. I stood by the window, watching snow fall steady and soft. And I whispered to the woman whose picture glowed on the mantel. We kept our promise. Ellie, the house is safe. The lights are still on. They're all too insanely unflagged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt not just alive, but free.